Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Commander's Course studio. Welcome to the show. So we are just about halfway through the day, and actually I just had lunch, but unfortunately, well, Rocco Cabaretti Caterer was not the one who made my lunch. It was made by me. But aside from being a fantastic caterer, Rocco also is a commander that can essentially make any creature be your commander. Kind of. Also today we've seen widespread thievery and find out why I said no when I saw this card. And on top of that, well, look, the text is upside down this one intentionally because it says do a barrel roll. Get it? Because Falco? No, I know that's Peppy hair. Regardless, this episode is not about any of those things. It is about Ognis the Dragon's Lash and, yeah, treasures. Lots and lots of treasures. A ton of treasures. Do you like treasures? Do you like commanders? Cool. Treasures. And of course, a huge thank you to Eddie for all the help during spoiler season, but also, of course, if I make any mistakes on anything, please blame Eddie. And actually, ironically, Eddie helped stop me from making a mistake on this episode, but still, blame Eddie. And now with all that said, let's jump into it. So, Ognis the Dragon's Lash is a 3/3 Viashino warrior with haste that costs 1, get ready for it, Rakdos, Red, and Gruul. So that is a new mana cost that we've never seen in the command zone before. Regardless, she has, whenever a creature you control with haste attacks, create a tapped treasure token. So yeah, I mean, do you like hasty creatures? Do you like swinging? Do you like treasures? If all those things are yes, this could be the commander for you. But yeah, in all seriousness, this commander can pack quite the punch. Treasures, as we've seen through the past couple of years, have proven to be an incredibly powerful thing, and yeah, who knew? Lotus petals. Powerful. Okay. Obviously, there is a limitation with this commander, and this is where Eddie came in and helped, because if I, kind of skipped over that part just a little bit, that the treasures come into play tapped, if I would have skipped over that, I would have made a slight mistake coming up. So although you cannot utilize those treasures obviously right away to make mana with this commander, obviously you can just, stockpile treasures by swinging with a ton of creatures with haste to make an absurd amount of treasures to use next turn. And then, attack with even more creatures with haste for more treasures. And you see where this is going. But yeah, overall, there are some really spicy things that you can do with this commander. Again, even though there is that limitation that those treasures do come into play tapped, and you can't utilize them right away. And really quick, just like I've been saying on other quick takes about commanders, in the description below, you'll see a link to a list of cards, and that would be the list of cards I'm talking about with this commander, because yeah, if you're interested in building around this commander, you might want to pick up those cards sooner rather than later, because when players get excited about a brand new spoiled commander, sometimes the demand for certain cards go up. And now with that said, let's jump into the cards. And first up, this is definitely where I was going to make that mistake, but I didn't now, thank you Eddie, but also blame Eddie. Aggravated Assault, Hellkite Charger are two cards that immediately came to mind when I saw this commander, but to make these work in the way that you really want them to work, Amulet of Vigor is something that you need. So regardless, what do these cards do and why are they important with this commander? Well, Aggravated Assault has pay 3 red, untap all creatures you control after this phase, the additional combat phase, followed by additional main phase. Place ability only anytime you could play a sorcery. And then Hellkite Charger is somewhat similar. It's a 5/5 dragon with flying and haste. So yeah, treasure token when we attack with this one. And it says, whenever Hellkite Charger attacks, you may pay 5 red. If you do, untap all attacking creatures. And after this phase, the additional combat phase. Now again, if like me, you just completely missed that one, word tapped on the commander, you'd have been like, oh, cool, okay, I'll swing with, creatures that have haste. With Aggravated Assault, if I've got 5 of them, and with Hellkite Charger 5/7 of them, that's infinite combats, right? And that would be correct, again, if those treasures didn't come into play tapped, but they do, but they don't if you've got Amulet of Vigor, if that makes any sense. Because Amulet Vigor says whenever a permanent enters the battlefield tapped under your control, untap it. So yeah, obviously all these cards work incredibly well in this deck already because, well, additional combats are already going to be a powerful thing. Just, even if you're not utilizing those treasures to do that, by paying that mana into these, even with your lands or whatnot, you essentially are going to be generating more treasures for you to use later. And of course, Amulet of Vigor, even without the other combo pieces for this, is like, hey, those treasures that are coming to play tapped? They're no longer tapped. Cool, you can utilize them right away. And of course, obviously, when you have, either of these combinations in play, you are going to be able to go infinite if you've got enough hasty creatures attacking that can survive combat. So, best of luck to your opponents in that scenario. That being said, do keep in mind that Aggravated Assault is like a $45 card or something like that, and Amulet Vigor is about half that price. I think it's around $20 or something, so those are quite expensive if you're looking to add them to your deck, but if you got the budget, good for you! Regardless, of course, just your standard, extra combat spells that don't go infinite like Relentless Assault and World at War, those can really help out with this commander again because, obviously, the more times you attack with your hasty creatures, the more treasure tokens you're going to be making. Relentless Assault just basically says take an extra combat, and then World at War basically gives you an extra combat as well, but it also has rebound, so you get it again. And then Morog can also help us out as well. It says each creature you control gets +1/+0 for each time it has attacked this turn. So the more times we swing with a creature, again with extra combats, the harder we hit with those creatures. And of course, on top of that as well, it has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, if it's your main phase, there's an initial combat phase. After this phase, at the beginning of that combat, untap all creatures you control. So yeah, have fun with your Evolving Wilds or ramp spells or just, your regular land drop for the turn, getting extra combats. Now, of course, I could list a multitude of creatures that have haste that you could consider for this stack, but I also could just list things that essentially make hasty creatures, like Goblin Assault and, in a weird way, Sylvan Awakening. Goblin Assault says at the beginning of your upkeep, create a 1/1 red Goblin creature token with haste, and Goblin creatures attack each turn if able. Yeah, this is basically just a fantastic token generator for this deck. This is like, hey, here's a 1/1 Goblin with haste. Alright, good luck surviving combat, you cute little goblin. You're just a 1/1, but you got haste, so attack. Oh, I get a treasure. Oh, you didn't survive. Well, that's too bad. Or maybe sometimes they do survive, and then this actually makes you more than one treasure each turn technically because, well, the more and more goblins that survive, the more treasures you get each turn from this. And of course, one spell that can make you an incredible amount of treasures in a turn is Sylvan Awakening. It says, until your next turn, all lands you control become 2/2 elemental creatures with reach, indestructible, and haste. They're still lands. So have fun swinging out with your indestructible, hasty lands because every single land that you attack with is going to be making you a treasure. So yeah, just keep some of these kind of more odd cards in mind when it comes to cards to consider for this deck. They don't always just have to be, creatures that just have haste, though I'm sure there are plenty of great creatures that have haste that you're going to want to consider as well. Or, you can just also include effects that give your creatures haste with things like Fires of Yavimaya and Anger. Fires of Yavimaya just says creatures you control have haste. Okay, it also says sacrifice a target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn, but I have very rarely seen that used. Because, yeah, keeping this in play is incredibly impactful. Giving your creatures haste obviously lets you just swing away with them, and also this commander gives you a bunch of treasures. And then Anger itself has haste, and it's a 2/2, so swing away with it, and when it's in your graveyard, it can help you out even more, because if you control a mountain, creatures you control have haste. So this can make you a treasure itself, and also make you treasures, when it's in your graveyard, kind of, by helping out other creatures. That being said, Fires of Yavimaya is especially a kind of chopping block consideration if the vast majority of creatures, or pretty much all your creatures in your deck, have haste already. But on top of our creatures benefiting us by giving us treasure tokens because they have haste, well, our opponents can help benefit us too. Isn't that nice of them? So how about Molten Primordial? It's a 6/4 with haste, so there we go, treasure token, thank you. And on top of that, when it enters the battlefield for each opponent, we gain control up to one target creature that player controls until end of turn. Untap those creatures, they gain haste until end of turn. So, essentially, although this is a 7-mana spell, obviously we get a 6/4 hasty avatar with this, and of course on top of that we get 3 of our opponent's creatures, and they get haste, so basically we get 4 treasures from this single creature. On top of just borrowing our opponent's creatures to smack them in the face with their own creatures. And speaking of borrowing creatures, well, we can borrow even more with Mob Rule. It says choose one, gain control of all creatures with power 4 greater until end of turn, untap those creatures that gain haste until end of turn, or pretty much the exact opposite, creatures with power 3 or less. Regardless, yeah, gain control of a ton of creatures, untap them, they get haste, swing away, make a ton of treasures, and smack your opponents in the face. And of course, yeah, this deck is going to have no problem with all the treasures that it can create, so, Insurrection! Untap all creatures and gain control of them until end of turn, they gain haste until end of turn. So, swing away with everything, basically make a treasure for every single creature on the battlefield. So if your opponents actually survive that swing, well, good luck to them with all the mana that you just made, or temporary mana. Mana that you have for later. Treasures, you know what I mean. But of course, we can get even more out of our commander and even more of our treasures with things like Goldspan Dragon, Wolfgar Icewind Dale, and Korvold Fakers King. Goldspan Dragon is a 4/4 flying hasty dragon, yay treasure, that has when it attacks it becomes the target of a spell created treasure token, yay another treasure, and also treasures you control have tap, sacrifice artifact, add 2 mana of any one color. So Goldspan Dragon does a ton of work for this deck. I mean, again, it is a hasty creature, so we get a treasure there. When it attacks or becomes the target of a spell, we also get a treasure. So on attack, we get 2 treasures. On top of that, treasures we control can now tap and sacrifice themselves for 2 mana instead of 1. So yes, this card's expensive, and yes, this card would be good with this commander. And actually, a good amount of other things in this set. There's a lot of treasures in this set. Regardless, a much more affordable card, which I believe is right under $1 at this point right now, with Wolfgar Icewind Dale, a 4/4 human barbarian with melee, and it says if a creature you control attacking would cause a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers additional time. So yeah, that is an incredible effect for a commander that has an attack trigger, you know, on all your hasty creatures, and it's like, hey, okay, instead of just making 1 treasure on hasty attack, let's make 2 per, again, creatures that have haste. That seems pretty incredible. And then Korvold Fakers King, which actually is a decently expensive card as well, around $10 or so, has when it enters the battlefield or attacks, sacrifice another permanent, and whenever you sacrifice a permanent, put a +1 counter on Korvold and draw a card. So essentially, when you sacrifice your treasures, because Korvold loves treasures, you make Korvold larger with those counters, and of course you draw cards, which is just absolutely incredible. Sacrificing treasures for mana and drawing cards, yeah, that can get out of hand really quickly. Next up, some other ways to benefit from sacrificing your treasures are with cards like Fangren Marauder and Marionette Master. Fangren Marauder, that is really hard to say. I literally just had to re-record that a couple times. I think I got it though, is a 5/5 beast that does not have haste, but it does have. Whenever an artifact is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you may gain 5 life. So sacrifice a treasure, add 1 mana, gain 5 life. That's one way to pad your life total, and yeah, once you get going, it's going to be pretty hard to take you out. Speaking of taking players out, Marionette Master. I've brought this card up now in a couple episodes because treasures, yay! It has Fabricate 3, and most of the time you're going to have it enter the battlefield 3 counters on it, so then it's a 4/6, and whenever an artifact you control spawns graveyard from the battlefield, target opponent loses life equal to Marionette Master's power. So whenever you sacrifice a treasure, that opponent that you choose is losing 4 life. Yeah, this can get out of hand quickly. Speaking of which, if you want to win in a different way, you know, outside of taking your opponent's life totals down with something like that, you can do so with things like Revel in Riches and Hellkite Tyrant. Revel in Riches says whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, create a treasure token, and at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 10 or more treasures, you win the game. Yeah, getting 10 treasures with this deck is going to be incredibly simple. Now, whether Revel in Riches can survive until your upkeep, that's going to be the trick. And speaking of an upkeep alternative win con, well, let's talk about Hellkite Tyrant. It's a 6/5 dragon with flying and trample, and when it deals combat damage to a player, you gain control of all artifacts that player controls. So that can be a fun way to steal everyone's artifacts. But more importantly, at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 20 or more artifacts, you win the game. So unlike Revel in Riches, this counts every single artifact, not just treasures, and it's counting the ones that you steal and the ones that you already have, and then also the treasures that you're making too. But again, keep in mind each of these are upkeep triggers, so they've got to stick around until your upkeep for you to win with them. And really quick, every single time I talk about, you know, commanders with treasures, I pretty much have to bring these up. Parallel Lives, Doubling Season, Primal Vigor, all very expensive, all very good with, you know, doubling up tokens. Gosh, I mean, I think Parallel Lives like 50, Doubling Season's like 80, Primal Vigor's I think 50 or so. They're all very expensive, they're all very good. Sure, if you've got the budget for it, go for it. If not, that's okay. But also, that new art on Parallel Lives looks amazing, and yeah, it's a Judge promo, so that thing's gonna be really expensive. Now, really quick, when it comes to commanders that might want Ognis, obviously, commanders that care about treasures or, have hasty creatures in them, quite a few of those, definitely want to consider it, but also maybe Najeela. I guess I should say, depending on how competitive your Najeela deck is. Keep in mind, Ognis is a warrior, which obviously helps with Najeela, because Najeela says, whenever a warrior attacks, you may have its controller create a 1/1 white warrior creature token that's tapped and attacking. And by paying Wooburg, untap all attacking creatures that gain trample, lifelink, and haste until end of turn. After this phase, the initial combat phase, activate only during combat. So yeah, additional combat on your commander, great. And then, giving your creatures haste that are going to be attacking again to make more tokens, great. Yeah, it could definitely find a spot again, depending on how competitive your deck is. But now as this episode is coming to a close, it's time for me to give you my final thoughts on Ognis, the Dragon's Lash. Again, do you like attacking? Do you like attacking quickly with hasty creatures? Do you like treasures? Cool. Do you like Amulet of Vigor? Awesome. I mean, if you like spending $22 on that card. Yeah, there are some really powerful things that you can do with this commander, obviously. I do like that there is that limitation that those treasures come into play tapped, because this could get pretty broken pretty quickly if not. And actually, moving forward, I do think that we're going to see probably more of these effects that make treasures come into play tapped because, well, as we've seen over the past couple of years again, treasures are a very powerful thing. But, I could be wrong on that because, Burglar's Halo Stash is a thing and those don't come into play tapped. And if you haven't seen that episode, make sure you check that one out at some point, as well as my other quick takes. And yeah, other quick takes are going to be coming out as well. I'm sure there's going to be even more exciting cards and probably more cards that deal with treasures. And with that, the show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on this episode are. And as always, thanks again and have a good one.